Welcome to Talking Pictures. My name is Christian Genzel. I'm a filmmaker and film journalist from Salzburg, Austria. Talking Pictures is an interview series in which I talk to the people behind some of my favorite movies. From cult movie directors to character actors, from seasoned veterans to brilliant newcomers, from celebrated artists to filmmakers who haven't received the recognition they deserve. These folks have lots of fascinating stories to tell. Today's guest is cult filmmaker Jackie Kong, best known for her outrageous horror comedy DINER, the charming story of two homicidal brothers who dig up their uncle's corpse and follow the instructions from his undead brain to kill a large number of people so that they can use the body parts to resurrect the ancient Lumerian goddess Sheetar. The film, which came out in 1987, is now well regarded as an underground cult movie which has seen quite a few successful revival screenings in the past few years. Kong made her first film in her early 20s together with her then husband Bill Osco, a monster movie called The Being, which stars Martin Landau, José Ferrer and Osco himself, shot in 1980, released in 1983. She also made two comedies, both in the vein of the Police Academy movies, Night Patrol, starring the unknown comic Murray Langston and Linda Blair, and The Underachiever, starring Edward Albert and Barbara Carrera. And then, after 4 films, she pulled a J.D. Salinger. She stopped making movies and mostly disappeared from the public eye. In recent years, she's launched a website where she addressed rumors about herself. She attended many screenings of her films, she recorded audio commentaries for re-releases of her movies, and she's currently working on a new project. In our interview, Jackie talks about the making of DINER, her aesthetic and her characters, and she discusses her particular twisted brand of Americana. If you enjoy my conversation with Jackie Kong, make sure to check out our other interviews at talkingpicturespodcast.com and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and the podcast platform of your choice. So here's Talking Pictures with Jackie Kong. Do you enjoy shocking people? Do you enjoy provoking them?
Since I was a child, that's my trait. I loved getting a reaction. Shocking people is part of it, obviously, but getting a reaction. No one is going to sit in any of my films passively. Either you're going to laugh, or you're going to scream, or you're going to hate it, or you're going to love it. So to me, a failure as a filmmaker would be someone that sits in your perfectly good-looking film with no feeling whatsoever, and no emotion whatsoever. To me, that would be a failure as a filmmaker. And I see lots of that happening a lot. Beautiful pictures, scripts that have been done over and over and over again, no surprises. It looks good, sounds good, and people walk out saying, oh, they don't remember it because it would left no impression. Mm-hmm. And so I'm pretty proud of the fact that when you watch my films and people remember them decades later, including Quentin Tarantino, scene by scene. He can do every scene, for example, from Night Patrol. And he acted out his favorite scene for me. When I met him the first time, he goes, what's your favorite, what's your favorite, he's how he talks. What's your favorite scene and at that time he had just done Reservoir Dogs. And he was a big fan because he worked at a video store and apparently watched my films over and over and over again while he's the manager of the video store. So the idea, he understood that, my films got a reaction and he that's what he does. He does the same kind of thing, shock value. I think, being a female film director, people are somewhat surprised by that. But if I were a man, I don't think people would be surprised by that at all. The reactions that I get, the things that I use to get those reactions. But being a female, especially when I was directing, they considered my sensibility to be completely confounding. Mm. It was way before its time as far as DINER. I purposely cast opposite type for the killers. They were charming and good looking. In the script, they were considered ghoulish and ugly, and you could see them coming a mile away. Serial killers that were nice and charming and guys you wanted to date were against all sensibility at the time. So when we went to get the rating at the MPAA for the film to release it theatrically, they turned off the film and said that this film has no morally redeeming values whatsoever. And interestingly enough, and they said if we had to rate it, they actually turned it off and he was so upset. He said, if I had to rate this film, you would get like three X's. It wouldn't be just one X. And they said that for you to get anything other, you'd have to make major cuts. And I said, what would I cut? The whole film? I mean, there would be 1 minute of credits perhaps, but but no film. And I said, this is the film. I turned to Vestron and I said, let's take it out unrated, because if it goes out unrated, then I don't have to make any cuts. If people don't get it, they don't get it. But it turned out that certain places really got the film. Like we were opened in San Francisco, and then we moved from a grindhouse to an art house. Literally, that film transformed from, because it transcends the genre, it moved from your typical grindhouse theater, for exploitation films, to the Castro, which was the art house in San Francisco. And in fact, when it played worldwide, because the film got such a reaction, it was picked up everywhere, dubbed in 5 languages or more, I think 7 languages, Spanish, Italian, German, French, Chinese. It was like it got picked up everywhere theatrically, and it got a great response everywhere but the U.S. initially, and the U.S. caught up with it about 30 years later when I Insanity tour. I started my Insanity tour of the film in 2016 and ran through the pandemic almost, because what happened is it started picking up steam. We were selling out theaters all over the U.S., starting in Austin, then going to New York, and then Kansas City, Miami, Vancouver, Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, LA. Ended up in LA and ended up playing 3 theaters in LA. The Chinese Theater, and sold that out, and then played the New Art Theater, which is very prestigious, which is an art house. I'll give you the lineup. It was Dennis Hopper's Easy Rider, David Lynch, Sam Raimi, and Blood Diner in that lineup. And I'll send you that lineup. And it was really, and someone said, well, they're in good company to me, because I'm in good company. But because the film as an art piece is well crafted. If you watch that film, especially the last 10 minutes of the film, I tell people, if you're not into horror, if you're not into being shocked, at least sit in for the last 10 minutes, because that is a well crafted 10 minutes of a finale. And it was literally 1 page in the script, and I shot 4 days in that club with 100 extras and effects and music, and I shot every day 90 setups a day, so 360 shots make up that last 10 minutes.
Wow.
And the editor didn't know how to cut it because none of that was scripted. I wrote it out in rehearsal, and then the editor looked at me and said, I have no idea. So I actually edited the last 10 minutes, that whole finale from the time they entered the club until the end. I had to literally do it cut by cut. And when I did it, I said, now it's done. Because you have to knit chaos very carefully. Chaos is he tried and he said it's just a mess, I said it creates no feeling. I said chaos, like a war scene, is very carefully crafted to always leave people hanging. So if you watch the finale, you'll see everyone is hanging. I never finish what happens to everybody. I have 5 different things going on. More than that, I've got the bands, the ritual, the 2 guys, the 2 cops, all of the zombies, the people that turn into zombies in 3 stages. First they turn green, and then they turn into zombies, and then they start eating each other, and then they kill each other. It's like a massacre scene. So to do that, we had to, to do that in 4 days, 90 setups a day, single camera, was a feat. I mean, it was, I had scripted A through Z zombie attacks that were not in the script that I wanted to. It's like a war scene when you have like attack, so that would create this backdrop for this finale that was not, that had to be what they entered to create this chaos. But like I said, chaos is extremely controlled. To create the sensation of chaos, one has to know how to craft it in a way that's very controlled. So again, you're leaving everyone hanging. So if you watch it again, you'll see from the moment they enter the club, nothing is ever finished. And that way we come back to it. So everyone is like a cliffhanger over and over and over and over again for 10 minutes.
Yeah, I noticed with the sequence, in a way it's the same principle that you used in The Underachievers, with the cross-cutting between the individual storylines. It's just that in Blood Diner you have everything happening in one location, and in The Underachievers you have, the stage play, and you have the exam people are taking, and you have the story with the mafia guy. So it sort of comes to a climax. It sort of gathers momentum
For the big
with
finale.
everything happening at once in a way.
Yes, yes. I try to deliver a good ending because I find that most comedies, or especially comedies, start to wane during the course of the film. So it starts off great, very funny, and then all of a sudden they have to introduce the plot. And when they introduce the plot, which is tricky in comedy, usually the comedy starts to go down because it becomes heavy with exposition and trying to explain what's going on, and suddenly it's not funny anymore. And then there's no ending. Night Patrol, when we started Night Patrol, there was no ending. I had to come in and I told the writers, because they were comedy writers, to write an ending. They were used to writing jokes, but not a story. So I had asked them to write it while we were shooting, because we were shooting weekends only on that film. We had almost no money, zero money. And everyone was working deferred on weekends from April 15th. I still remember that. I said, whether we have money or not, we're rolling April 15th. So every weekend, I said, just gather me the camera at 5,000 feet of film, and the actors I'll rehearse during the week, and we'll just run and grab it all over LA, which is what it was, like a hit and run grabbing of all those scenes. I would do 2 locations a night in Los Angeles, because I had rehearsed all the actors thoroughly during the week. So they were ready just to come in and do it. We'd just pop into the location. I was, that film is an example of trying to get as much on film, in camera, as humanly possible by planning everything every shot thoroughly, shot by shot, and rehearsing the actors. That was my trademark. One of my other trademarks, even in Blood Diner, people wondered how I shot that in 18 days. I shot the film in 18 days because we were completely rehearsed. I rehearsed with the actors for all of the actors, even the zombies, for a month, a little over a month before we started rolling. So everybody knew what they were supposed to do, and I knew what I could get from them. And that is why I made that one character, Stan's friend, into a dummy. Because I said, I was looking at the actors, because I really watch. I sit and I will redo my shot breakdown after rehearsal. I'll do some rewrites during rehearsal, not during filming. So this is a correction. Someone said, oh, you were writing during filming. I said there was nothing changed from rehearsal to filming because I don't have time. I'm shooting average 50 setups a day during the regular day, and on the finale, 90 setups a day. I said I had times by my shots because I knew in rehearsal what I already had, so I could design my shots. Do you see what I'm saying? Very quickly and in location. So it was very fast. It was pure execution during filming, no room for change, no improvisation during Blood Diner at all. No changes from rehearsal the month before. And the writer was not allowed on the set because I didn't want him coming in and trying to say, oh, you're changing my story. Because it was, that writer he never was allowed onto the set. And the problem I have with it, I did that one time where I let writers come onto the set. And the problem is they have their own vision. And I don't have time to explain my vision to them. That's my job to do the way I see the script. Do you see what I'm saying? So I don't, as a rule, even on Night Patrol, that one of the team of writers that was working on it, the only one that was there on the set was the ones that were in the film, the unknown comic, and. But the other writers, I don't even think I ever met them even. It was, and still to this day I've not met the others. So.
The writers who are listening to this podcast are going to love this.
They're going to love it because I tell you, they're going to know it's true. And what's so weird is when they did because the films became hits and I got a lot of critical acclaim. What's weird is I believe one of the writers said, oh, they were like writing at night during the filming, and that's just not true. That didn't happen. There was no writing at night during the film. But I get that people want credit, so I'm not going to, discuss it in detail. But I can assure you, those writers never made it onto my set.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it was like it was my version of it. For example, in rehearsal, in the script of Blood Diner, there was the dummy, the one character that was a person. It was a scripted person.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a dummy. And during rehearsal, I changed it to a dummy. I said, a dummy can act better than this. So, and so people were auditioning and coming in. I said, and I turned to my art department, which I was very close to. I said, make me a dummy. I said, because then they looked at me, the producer looked at me and said, you're crazy because it can't be a dummy because it has lines. And I said, yeah, we'll give it the lines. The dummy can do the line. I said, because what sells loneliness better than no customers, no friends, and then you have to talk to a dummy.
And it's one of the best jokes, basically, in the film. It's so absurd, especially when he's being attacked. He's still talking as the dummy and discussing things.
Yeah, and that to me, this creates a much more interesting film. I mean, but if the writer saw that I turned one of his characters into a dummy, they would be having a fit, you see. So I don't have time to especially when I'm filming that fast. I've never had the luxury of big budgets or a lot of time or money ever. Always having to be clever with the resources that we have, which were never quite enough. So I'd always have these extensive meetings. Even now, in lockdown during this pandemic, I've already done a 25-page shot breakdown with my cinematographer. We're talking about 25 single line shots of the pilot. And I haven't even finished the finale yet. I stopped because I have my production design team working on the set that I want to build to do the finale in. And you cannot design the shots until you understand the set, the setting. So I said it's going to be a big finale and I want to build this set. So right now, in fact, I was just looking before we started, I'm meeting with them today because I've had them redo the one big set 4 times, just to give you an idea. Because and so the film, for the money we had, looks tremendous. And even if you forget the money we had, the films look good because they're designed. Does that make any sense? Nobody walked and just films haphazardly on one of my films. And again, because I've never had the luxury of that, I'm sure that must be fun for people just to walk on and figure it out on the spot. But I find that it doesn't make for a good film from the way I direct. The way that I direct, everything is laid out and designed like a, and I always film sitting by the camera. People, it's like the old Hitchcock way. I sit seriously on the dolly with the cinematographer right behind his head, so I can see exactly. You got to remember, I'm shooting film. I'm not shooting video with a video village 20 feet away because I like to be near actors. So I can give them direction. Sometimes I don't even cut. I'll just talk to them and say, okay, do it again, try this. And I won't even cut, and there'll be like 5 takes, so I can just pick one that I know I like when I'm rolling. So I won't even cut sometimes, and the only way you can do that is to be right where they can hear you. Do you see what I'm saying? Right? And when I'm by the camera and I'm looking over that way I can whisper in the cinematographer's ear, or the operator. Lots of times I work with operators to free up the cinematographer. I can talk to him and I can see the pan. I can see exactly what he's seeing because I'm right behind him. You see what I'm saying? Or I know Hitchcock used to go under the camera. I prefer to be under the camera. I prefer to be right on the same line as the lens, behind the cinematographer. So I can see, even if there's a zoom, I can see how fast it is. If there's a pan, I can see exactly where the lens is going. So, but I'm pretty well versed in, cameras and lenses. I even call the lenses. I'll say, I want a 50 millimeter lens right here. Or give you a 200 millimeter lens, like on the beginning of A Night Patrol in that park scene. That's a 250 millimeter lens shooting down the length of Santa Monica Park, the bluff overlooking Santa Monica beach. And so I had to station my assistants down that long walkway, and all those people in the background don't know we're filming because we're way down 250 down the walkway, 250, with a 250 millimeter lens, so they don't even see us. So I had to station the assistants to send in the actors to crisscross, and then have an assistant director pull focus as he comes closer to the camera.
Yeah, those are the strategies that you need as an independent filmmaker when you don't have a lot of money and you don't have a lot of time.
And you want it to look good. You want it to
Yeah.
look real. Because the problem is I've seen a couple of films lately people send me, and there's a low-budget movie, you've got to take a look at it, and it's a high school, for example. I said, where are all the people? They don't think that they have the same 5 people, and there are no other people around. And this is a strategy. You have to have. I use people like art direction. This is really what to me, the people in the scene are as important as the art direction. It's like it creates the vibe, the environment. And so you'll see that in all my films, even Blood Diner, it's always full. The club is full. The diner is full. Not only is the diner full, the street outside the diner on the sidewalk is full of people, a line of people trying to get in. If you look at Blood Diner on a big screen, which when we screened it, which is the way you should see it, because it was shot on 35, meant to be seen on a theater screen. In the diner, you will see 3 layers of action always that we lit, and I directed 3 layers. So you've got, let's say, Rick and the Virgin talking in the foreground, close up. You've got the cheerleaders and the customers in the midground. And then you've got the line of people outside the window, so we had to gel the windows. And you've got Hollywood Boulevard, full of traffic and people walking on the other side of the street. There are actually several layers of action going on, so it looks like you're in a city. It looks like a real place. So people thought that we were really in some diner that existed. No, we created that diner. There was nothing there. And that club was the same thing. There was no club. We created the club. So it was a vacant speakeasy from the 1930s. And I built the set for the back room of the diner at another part of that location. Because when you walk through the door in the diner, in the real location where we shot the dining room scene, there's no back room. You hit a wall. So I had them build a door and then take that door to the next set, so that every time they walk from the front diner to the back room, we're now on another set, completely shot at another location. That's sort of movie magic, but that's why I have to build sets on the current project that I'm doing, because I want that freedom of lighting and the freedom of movement with the dolly and the camera that you can't get on location. On location, you end up, not compromising the lighting and not being able to move the camera because you've got to take out a wall. You need that 4th wall gone so you can be on that side. Otherwise, you've got to use wide-angle lenses that don't look good. You see what I'm saying? So, I know now they've got these little digital cameras you can stick up in a corner that sends a digital signal, but I like to move the camera. So, that's just the way if you watch my films, you'll see the cameras constantly in motion.
I looked at a lot of the scenes in especially Blood Diner and Night Patrol, and I noticed that the camera is always it's scoping the sort of the layout of the room in a way. And I think that the setups actually are not that complicated, but you have just enough of them so that it keeps moving, so that it keeps that it looks interesting. But I can see the planning behind it, because I know what it means to do an independent film, and you only have 2 hours to shoot at one location, or you only have you only have the actor for so and so long. And you need to know exactly in advance what you're doing. And some of the scenes in Night Patrol, for example, you only have 1 setup or maybe 2, and then a couple of inserts that allow you to sort of move the story along at a faster pace. So I find that interesting.
Yeah, Night Patrol was a tough shoot because we shot night, so you have very limited hours before the sun comes up. It's like being vampires. So you always are, and because we are shooting Fast and Furious, we were always shooting two locations a night. So you can imagine having to light two locations a night, not just walk in like daylight and shoot, with a few reflector boards. You're talking about lighting the bar, the Meat Market Saloon, which was a big room, and to get those reverses, to shoot one direction of them coming in and then light it and turn around and get all the reverses. So I had everything planned always around the lighting. It's really quite interesting. If you watch that, I shoot out everything totally out of order in order to get all of the shots in that one direction for several scenes. All of the cop driving scenes with the car mounts were all shot in one pass. We're talking about, it's a cop movie and they're driving a lot. And I had them sit on a sofa in rehearsal and jump from scene 7. Okay, now let's go to scene 32. Now let's go to scene 71. Now let's go to scene 120. And they would be able to jump from one scene to the next while driving, because back then we didn't have enough money to tow it. So we had big cameras on the hood of the car. And Pat Paulson had to drive, which you have obstructed views, down Hollywood Boulevard in some of the really worst parts of LA, nonstop, and doing his lines while driving a vehicle and jumping. I'd be on a truck in front of them saying, okay, now jump. Let's jump to scene 73 or something. And then they'd have to do those lines. And then it would jump to, so everything, all of that stuff, you didn't have the luxury. It looks like it's, in real time, but in fact, every driving scene was shot in one night, less than one. And while we were shooting the exterior of of another location, I said, okay, let's get the car mounts mounted up. We're going to go shooting the street stuff. And while they're lighting the exterior of another spot for when they go into that nightclub. So anyway, that's really the magic of, if you plan everything, that you can create this sense of and I feel pretty good about the fact that I'm able to create a sense of the locale. Mm-hmm. People always, apparently a lot of people love to go to the location of Blood Diner. Mm-hmm. It's on the corner of Hollywood Boulevard and Cahuenga, one of the busiest intersections in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. I was filming there with my crew in that diner on the corner, and it was summer, and we'd gel the windows, and I had the whole place pre-lit so I could go all over the diner with lights above. So if you watch that, you'll see all the lights are up above and then tweaked for the close-ups. It got 120 degrees. It was like heating up in that little place, and we had no dressing rooms, there was nowhere to get away. We were just filming in this hot, ridiculously hot box with all of those extras. And so, again, full of people. I never had it empty. Same thing with the club. But if you watch closely, these are the same extras. Mm-hmm. Dressed differently in the club, in the restaurant, in the police station. We had a dedicated group of people working on it, but you can feel it. Christian, you can feel it when it's working. There's a vibe, like a night patrol. Everyone, even though we were doing weekends only, crew members wanted to throw money into the film because they could feel it working. And I believe that everyone wants to work on a good film. There are a lot of films that are made, and they work on stuff that never gets out there. Everyone wants to work on something good. And when filming, you can feel when it's good. You can feel that it's getting funny. In fact, on Night Patrol, I had to lay out a rule: nobody can laugh during a take, because it was so funny that I didn't want it ruined. I said, I don't want it ruined by somebody laughing, and I don't want the actors to play to my crew. Mm-hmm. I said, because these are comedians, they'll go for the laugh. They're trying to make people laugh. But I said, the only person you've got to make laugh is me. And I've got to get it on film, because it doesn't matter if the crew is laughing or it's not funny. I said, I have to make sure it's like really funny. So when we were filming that diner scene, we were shooting at a sort of a landmark in Santa Monica, this old diner called Ray's. I put the camera outside the window in order to get the master shot. of the two sitting in the booth and the waiter coming up behind them. And then I stationed someone to throw the spiders into the scene, or the bugs. So when we were filming it, I had the headset on, and the cameraman did as well, and I could see him starting to laugh because it's really one of the funniest scenes. I mean, in a master, one master, hilarious. So, so I see him starting, and I'm on a long lens. So as a filmmaker, when you're on a long lens, the movement sensitivity is extremely. It's like being in the top of a building during an earthquake, right? The sway is, the longer the lens, the more you see movement. That's why it's difficult to move a camera when you're using a long lens. That was the challenge, because I told Yurig, my cinematographer, we're not going on anything less than a 50 millimeter lens. No wide angle lenses, everything intimate. I prefer even 75 millimeter and up, meaning a long lens, meaning that things in the background go out of focus, and the person is the focus, right? Mm-hmm. And so whenever I'm doing that, so anyway, you're just like, I could feel him like starting to laugh because it is hilarious. And I'm on his ear. I'm literally on his ear because I'm right by him. I can see him. I'm saying in his ear, don't laugh, because I don't want the camera to shake, right? I said, I need this take. This is my master, and it's perfect. So you can't laugh. So that was a weird rule, because usually, you have to sort of say that, because in a comedy, there were certain things I came up with during making a comedy different than making a horror film. And that was one of them. Mm-hmm. Horror film, I don't have to worry about people laughing. They're more horrified than anything else. But on a comedy, if it's working, it should be funny even on the set. I mean, you can see it's working.
Mm-hmm. The diner scene is actually that's my favorite joke. When he squashes the bug on the window, because I don't see it coming, and even, I mean, I've seen the film many times, and every time I try to find out, okay, when does the bug come in? And well, of course, I noticed at some point that somebody throws it in after a cut, so that's why you don't see it. But it's such a surprise that all of a sudden he's squashing it and coming so close to the camera.
There's no cut. There was no cut in that. It was thrown in. I went and bought these things. I went and bought the fly swatter and the bugs, because they're sticky, right? So you needed someone with a really good arm that knew how to get it into the shot off camera in the middle of the window. So there was no cut. That was all the master. He threw it in perfectly. At that point, at a certain point, I give him, I signal him, and he throws it in. So if you watch it, there's no cut there. It's actually a one master. So I'm a big believer in masters when it works like that. I don't like to be cutty, but I like to cover so that I can change the pace of the scene. Especially with comedy, you want to be able to change the pace. And so if you watch, my films move pretty fast because I've got the coverage to change the pacing. But at the same time, I believe very much in the John Huston way of filming, which is, if you've got the actors and the performance is working, move the camera. Don't make a cut. If you watch like Preetzi's Honor or any of his films, he rarely cuts because he's working with tremendous actors who can deliver it all in a master. I mean, like the Preetzi's Honor, there's a couple of scenes with Bill Hickey and Jack Nicholson and John Randolph. Then he never cuts. Doesn't even cut. And these are all great actors. But my background, the reason why I have such, if you want to talk about editing, it's one of my favorite parts of the process, is because that's when you see your movie working and coming to life and creating the feeling. Is you can do it all in the cutting room if you have the coverage. And the person I learned that from, who taught me, my mentor, was Bob Downey Sr., that made crazy iconoclastic films of his era, Junior's dad, and a purist artist. As far as he's the most pure artist filmmaker I've ever come across, and extremely generous with information. And he came into the editing room of my first film, The Being, for no money. He just said, I'll come in and help you. And I learned so much because he taught me that you have full freedom to take things out, to change the pace. And you have to be sort of like fearless, not to just throw scenes out that you spent a lot of time shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so diplomatic. I find the really good artists are extremely respectful. Whenever I get someone that's disrespectful because I'm a woman, or disrespectful because at the time I was young, or now disrespectful, I found that the real artists like Bob Downey Sr., Rutger Hauer, always so respectful of my vision, and always never just telling me I think this is bad, or you should do this. Even if they thought it, they were extremely respectful, and they would say, try, what do you think of this? I find that to be the case. You see that with the really good artists that have the purity of vision and are doing it for the right reasons. You see what I'm saying? But anyway, he came into the cutting room of the being, and we did a version where he was dubbing one of the voices, and so funny. And one of the scenes was, I don't remember what scene it was, but it didn't make it in the movie. And he said to me so diplomatically, Jackie, that's a great scene. It just doesn't belong in this movie. Save it for another movie. And it was a nice way of saying it didn't work, but at the same time, it was a nice way of doing it, a respectful way. And so it makes me laugh. I always think about that. And then had a very bad assistant editor at the time who was a surfer guy that would come rolling in. And he goes, Jackie, you got to get rid of that guy. He goes, he was so funny. He is such a funny man. And he goes, I think that you need to get him on unemployment and call the unemployment office and tell them they should keep him on it permanently. Just to save other filmmaker. So I was lucky to have a very good mentor and teacher in the editing room that just taught me to just try crazy things, dub voices, change orders, and not be afraid to throw away things that you spent a lot of time shooting if you don't work. And a lot of people, young filmmakers, are afraid to do that. They're just afraid they can become attached. You see these cuts that are like hours and hours long that just cut down, get it down to make it work. They're afraid to cut it. They're afraid to make those changes. And you have to be fearless in the cutting room, really.
Yeah, I usually advise filmmakers against cutting their own movies because you always know that the film's gonna be like 15 or 20 minutes too long. And when you spend so much time on a scene, maybe the writer is also the director. He spent so much time writing it. He spent so much time setting it up and getting performances out of everybody. And, and like you say, or Bob Downey Sr. said, it just doesn't belong in the movie. Maybe it's just not meant to be in the movie.
Yeah, and it's not a bad scene. It just doesn't belong in the movie.
Yeah.
And that's a nice way of saying it doesn't work.
Yeah. I noticed with your editing, it's very fast. You don't linger on the shots. You don't linger on the scenes. You get in at the last possible moment, and you get out of the scenes at the earliest possible moments, especially in Night Patrol and Blood Diner.
I would rather people want more than get sick of watching the scene. And I tell you, a friend of mine, producer, casting director, said to me one time, and this is true also on scenes as well as actors. I won't name the film, but we were in Cannes, and I watched a film, and it was a debut of a big actor's directorial debut, and he put another actor in it, and everyone was predicting this actor would be huge, would be a big actor. So he asked me afterwards the screening. He said, "What did you think of so and so?" And I said, "Well, I tell you, I got tired of looking at him." And you know what he said to me? And this was like one of the biggest casting directors in Hollywood ever. He said to me, "Well, that's not the mark of a star. Because a star, you never get tired of looking at them." And that's interesting. So you don't want people to get tired of looking at your scene. And in fact, I just finished writing a new show that I would like to try to turn into a series. And when people read it, they said they always want to know what's going to happen next. They're on the edge of it's a page turner. You want to know what's going to happen next. I don't want to be watching a film in which I'm done. I don't really care about what happens next, right? And that's a challenge in a world where people have seen everything, right? people have seen, and especially in the horror genre, they've seen everything. So to surprise that audience, which Blood Diner continues to do to this day,
Mm-hmm.
people were bringing friends that had never seen it, that were huge fans. They were coming in costume. It was almost like a Rocky Horror Show type of screening every time we would go. It would be sort of like the rock star version of screening of releasing a movie, which I actually think one has to do at this point. And I don't think there are that many directors that can pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe John Waters, Quentin, of course, because he's Mr. Show. He's a very showy guy. But literally, when I went, it was like in New York, 200 people lined up out the door for my autograph and wanting to take pictures and buy merch and talk to me, or just say something. And my daughter was very impressed. Because I have a 19 at the time. She was like 16. She goes, God, it's so weird to see all these people lining up, shaking, wanting to talk to you about your film, because clearly, she said, your film really affected people. When I run a diner, even when we ran it at the New Art, because we did the Chinese theater at the end of the tour, then we were asked to play the New Art, which was very prestigious, and then after that we were asked to play Quentin's theater, the New Beverly Cinema, which is Hollywood. They told me it sold out more. They sold out faster than any other movie they had online. Sales. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and it was a full house, and nobody wanted to leave. And they said, "Would you please come down for a Q&A?" And I said, "Okay, let's do it after the second film." They're running The Being and Blood Diner. I said, "After Blood Diner," and they said, "Oh my God, no one's going to stay for that. That's going to be midnight." And I said, "Believe me, I've been on tour with this film. Nobody leaves. Everybody stays, even if it's 3 a.m. for the Q&A, because they all are jacked up. I don't know how to explain it. They're all amped up. The film amps people up. They gets them. They laugh so hard, and they're so outraged by the shock value of it. Nobody wants to leave, and everybody wants to talk about it. So, sure enough, we did. Not only did they not want to leave the Beverly Cinema when it was over, they were hanging in the lobby. Ever. I mean, it was like, it's because everybody is like, it's almost like when you finish a rock concert. You don't want to leave and go home. You want to go do something and hang with your friends and feel the vibe for a while. That's what my films do. You feel it. You walk away from it. I mean, when I went on tour, there were fans that had hardcore fans that was their favorite film of all times. They have Blood Diner tattooed on their arm. Told me, literally bringing donut heads for me as a present, and showing up in costume because it affected them, and the film, and they bring friends that don't know anything about it just to watch them react to it, and those friends are like want to talk to me because they've never seen anything like it before. Now the script I'm finishing, the people are telling me they've never seen a film like this before. I mean, it's like so outrageous, the characters I have.
Okay.
Yeah, so I will spill it a little bit with you, but I was going to hold off talking more about it until I'm on the fifth episode right now, writing it. By the time the pandemic is over, I should have 8 episodes written. And it is unlike anything out there, which is hard in horror fans to do. But people that read it say they can't wait to see what's going to happen next, and it's not like anything they've ever seen. I'm so tired, Christian, of the same films being made over and over and over again. Don't they trust any artist to make something new?
I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's like, come on. How many times can you remake a film that's already been made well? And it means that they're not getting the creative people in there that have and trusting them, that can do something different.
Because everybody's scared, I guess. Everybody's
they're scared of losing their job, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's becomes a sad thing when all the films are made by people afraid to lose their jobs. So instead, they'll do a remake because that feels safe, because at least they can say to their boss, "Well, it worked, before." We thought it would work again. Well, maybe they should put the directive to find something really fresh. But, unfortunately, that's the state of the industry. That's why you will see 3 studios making Godzilla, for example. They're all doing the same thing. Well, they're doing it, so it must not be bad. So it's sort of like a cover your ass type of filmmaking. So I'm making this. I will go out. I will shoot it 2021 if this pandemic thing lets up. And if I have to shoot it down and dirty, I'll shoot it down and dirty. But it is 8 episodes of something you've never seen before. And I sort of am enjoying the pandemic because it gives me, other than this interview, because I got 6 interview requests, and you're the only one I'm doing right now because I'm in the middle of writing.
Wow.
Yeah, and so because what happens, it interrupts my writing when I do interviews. I try to focus and do an interesting interview, so it's like it takes me out of my writing. But I finished my outline before we started, so I'm ruminating on it now.
Okay.
Yeah, I dream most of the scenes, so I have to outline them and then dream them and then write them, and then it comes very fast and scene by scene, but it is something unique, and I'm hoping that people are ready. I know people are ready for it. I hope that the stations are ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are absolutely ready, and they want to see good stuff and original stuff, and daring films, daring series.
I think so. I think they're just not being given that now because, and I'm hoping that with this pandemic, they will hopefully by accident maybe stumble on it. Because of the need for more programming, because there's going to be a drought soon. I mean, everything will have been played out, and that's been made already. And hopefully they will get this idea. Maybe we should do something original. And with my track record, you would think that people would say, "Oh my God, she's got a track record of movies hold up 30 years and with a sellout crowd, touring." You'd think that they would understand that, but there's a kind of a discrimination against not only, and it hasn't changed much against women filmmakers in general, being trusted, no matter how. And I even had somebody tell me, a producer tell me, I'd rather hire someone that's never done anything before. I can get that made easier than someone that is got a female track record, because they want the next latest thing. Someone, I said, "Are you kidding? You're not looking for someone that's actually that's like telling Stephen King, we want to find some writer that has never written anything over someone that already has a track record writing." But part of that is combination. At first it was because I was so young, because I was making these films in my 20s. It was like female, Asian American, and young. And I looked about 15 when I was directing these films. And then, but then, because I have this is the Asian thing. But now I still look like I'm, very young. But now it's like, oh my God, now you're female, you're Asian, and now you're older. We want to find somebody 20. But when I was 20, nobody wanted to work with me because I wasn't 40. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The bottom line was they just didn't want to work with me. They didn't really want. So I laugh about that a little bit, but not in a good way, about how this discrimination is, that things really haven't changed that much. Apparently nobody is looking to work with. So I get it done anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've never waited for someone to say, "Hey, we're looking for a really well-qualified female Asian American director." That's just not even on the checklist.
Yeah. I guess producers always think that young talent is, they can influence young talent much more than an established filmmaker or something. And I mean, you are a filmmaker who very much knows, what you're doing and you know what you want, and that, I guess, scares a lot of people.
Yeah, I guess, but it scared them when I was young. They have to stop being scared. Because the only way they're going to have a hit or a good film is to stop being scared and to be more fearless in their approach. Yeah. Because otherwise it's just a copycat. Christian, I don't make sequels of my stuff. All my films, like Night Patrol was #1 theatrically. They wanted a sequel. I said, you know what? I get that you make money on the sequel, and I get, but I said I would be more than happy to produce a sequel, but I don't want to direct it. I already directed that movie. And then they got upset. No, we want you to direct it. And I said, no, well, same thing with Blood Diner. Huge hit in Japan. Toho sent over a memo for like $500,000 to make a sequel. And I just said, I just made the movie. I mean, I don't really I wanted to make a biker movie at the time. I said, that sounds more interesting to me, a biker chick movie than Blood Diner again. So this is why I'm enjoying this series I'm writing, because I'm writing what I want. I know that there's nothing else like it, so probably it would take a visionary and a very brave producer / company to come in on making it. But I know that this is the kind of film like that I would want to make that would last, and that would make an impression and change perception. You've got to remember, when I made Blood Diner, there were no mass killings. You look at that opening disclaimer, even though it's made in fun, it says, as we know that mass, homicide exists, blah, blah, blah. There were no mass homicides. That was 30 years before its time. Now it's a daily occurrence that mass homicides exist. The fact that there are likable, normal guys that look like was aberrant, was horrible. They hated the fact that you couldn't see that they were clearly bad guys. Well, we can't tell whether these people that kill people are bad guys or not. They look these boys next door that go to college,
Yeah, they're usually nice people. I mean, that's the one line you always hear in an interview. Well, he was such a nice neighbor.
Yeah.
A little bit quiet, but yeah, he was so nice.
Yes, exactly. Well, so when I did it, it was so far ahead of its time that nobody got it. What I'm doing right now, I'm creating an urban legend that doesn't exist. And I just wrote her backstory, which is terrifying and yet funny, and certain the other characters are very funny, but her story is extremely scary. And I know that when people read it, they're going to say nothing like this exists. You know what I'm saying? As if that's a critique to change it. Okay. Am I supposed to change it into something that exists, that something that they can understand? I don't think so. That's not been my style in the past. I'm not sure. And this is another thing. I find that the people that do want to give me comments to change that I'd never asked for seem to, not know what they're talking about, with no experience whatsoever. If I'm going to ask somebody, I'm going to ask Bob Downey Sr., or I'm going to ask somebody like the head of distribution, or somebody that is in the field that knows what they're talking about. I'm certainly not going to take advice from somebody that has almost no credits. Does that make any sense? Or as a reader for some. I said, I'm sorry, but I didn't ask for those comments, so please don't even try to give those to me. So now people are afraid to tell me if they like it. Well, I tell them, look, I like discussing creative things. I don't like when someone doesn't know what they're talking about, haphazardly offers critique when you never asked for it.
Yeah, I think also when you give feedback, it's always important to find out what the person is trying to do in the first place. I mean, that's that's the basis for it. What is it that you're trying to do before I tell you what I think might be wrong with it?
Right. Well, the problem is this. When I finished Blood Diner, just so you understand, I got, and if someone's paying me a fortune to make a show, I will listen and look at their critique. I do. I'm not an impossible person. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to, part of the job is that, you can write so when I finished Blood Diner, was the next to the locked cut. It wasn't the fine cut yet. And the producer, one of the exec producers, saw it, and she gave me 6 pages of changes for Blood Diner. 6 pages. And so I read them all a single line, 6 pages. You should do this. You should do that. You should do this. You should do that. So I read over all of the pages, and I called her up, and I said, I'm not going to make any of those changes. Okay? Because the only change after hearing, because what I want when I screen, and I do like screening the movie to see reaction before I lock the cut. I said, what I screen a film for is not for someone to tell me what to do. It's for me for them to tell me or for me to get a sense of how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, it's not a matter of, because they have no idea what needs to be cut, what needs to be changed. They're guessing. Oh, if you took this character and moved it there, if you did this, they're just guessing in the wind, you know. They don't know. And yet it's like making a good meal and listening to everybody that tastes it tell you what you should add to it.
Mm.
By the time you finish, it's a disaster, you know. Either you have a very clear vision of what it is you're creating, or you don't. But what I do ask is, how does it make you? Did that make you laugh? Did that scare you? You know what I'm saying? I want to know if the feelings, okay, that are going on. And from those feelings, I will make a decision on how to adjust it. Does that make any sense? It's like someone writing a song and someone telling you, you should change the lyrics. I think it would be better if you, instead of using, Hey Jude, maybe Hey Babe. That would that would reach more people. They would understand Babe more than Jude. Nobody knows what Jude is. And maybe you should change it, speed it up a little bit, because it seems a little slow. I mean, how dare these people do this? Do you see what I'm saying? And as a woman filmmaker, I get this all the fucking time. Excuse my language. I always get dummies, total dummies, because only a stupid person would actually give unsolicited advice, right? To tell me, oh, you should do this or you should do that, or say why you're uniquely qualified to direct this movie. I said, why do I do that? Do you really think that's going to work? Me explaining when I write in my synopsis why I'm uniquely qualified to direct this film? I said, I said, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not changing a word, not a word. I said, but if you're able to articulate how you feel, I'll listen to that and see if I think it's relevant or not, and make my changes accordingly. So after getting my 6 pages from the executive producer, I said, I listened to how she felt. She made all these comments that I should do this, do that. I mean, these are detailed changes she's giving me. And then I said, I'm not willing to do anything that but I'm trying to get a sense of how you feel about the pacing. And I said, the only thing I'm willing to do, and it's not even in your notes, is I'm gonna flip-flop 2 scenes. So I moved one scene in front of the other. I didn't even cut them. I didn't even change any of the cut within. I said, but I feel like if that scene were moved up a little bit earlier, then the rest will flow. And I did that, and I never heard another comment. It was, you know what I'm saying? Not even, it was like you just have to see what the flow is and the feel, and then you make the change. You cannot listen to cut by cut, whether it's the censor board telling you to cut everything that was offensive to them. I said, what's offensive to you guys at the censor board was the fact that these are good-looking guys. I'm supposed to make them ugly now and ghoulish, and then I'm supposed to cut the rest of it. I said, if you don't get the movie, you just don't get the movie. It's not a matter of changing all these things that you think will make it more appropriate for an audience, right? So I didn't change a thing. We went out unrated. And when you go out unrated at that time, it meant you cannot advertise in any newspapers. And so we went out unrated. The film played San Francisco, opened there to sell out, in which I had win a date with the 2 lead characters at the Grindhouse, right? So it was sold out. It was like packed. It was a lot of fun on Market Street. And we had a big party at a club afterwards. But I had, then they're good-looking guys, so people were volunteering to win a date with them, right? So once they saw the film, no one showed up for the date. That was very hilarious. But then it moved to the Castro for a 1-month run at the art house because they got it in San Francisco. And then the film played like gangbusters in Germany, in Italy, in Japan, like huge. In the Europel magazine, they called me the next Roman Polanski. But they just didn't get it in the U.S., I mean, until 30 years later. Because fans on the internet went crazy film and wanted a re-release of a Blu-ray. And then Lionsgate asked me to come in and remaster from the negative and do a commentary. I did the commentary, and then I said under one condition that I go on tour with the film and take the remastered DCP out to theaters where it is the way it should be seen, and I'll market your Blu-ray for you. But I want surprisingly successful to them, not to me, because I knew I had huge fans. Because all I did was never advertised, aligned with all of the horror organizations in every town, in which it's on the top 10 favorite film list. So they got it out to all their fans. We sold out Brooklyn, the Alamo Drafthouse, Yonkers, Vancouver, anyway, all the cities I'd mentioned before. It was a great way to see the country because I took my daughter with me, and it was like a kind of a new, interesting way to release a movie. And you can only do that if you have a named filmmaker that audiences want to meet and revere, like their work. So my body of work holds up, which was a big compliment to me because most people can't even remember what they saw last week, yet alone, decades ago. And it's fresh on the big screen with an audience now as it was when I made it, if not fresher. I mean, and relevant. So I'm happy about that. I mean, and that's the kind of work I like to make. I don't want to make just work just to work. Mm-hmm. And I know that people, I see a lot of people, I just want to make a movie. I've already made 4 films, unless it's something really challenging like the series that I'm working on now, which will start as a film and then become a series. Only because I love the characters. The characters are so good. You want to know what happens to them. And again, it's the new frontier. I like that idea of this longer format, and it becomes the new delivery system now for making films. I was lucky enough to have worked in all of the delivery systems, starting with theaters with all my films, and then moving to video, and that became the big market. And then I did the first internet TV show with called Karaoke Nights. We shot over 10 episodes of a original series for the internet, even before there was bandwidth enough to watch them. And when I did that, it was because I thought it was interesting and a challenge to do a series on the internet to reach more people. The producers I talked to in Hollywood were like, "Are you crazy?" And this is only 20 years ago. You got to remember. Are you absolutely crazy? It was 18 years ago, actually, 19 years ago. No one is going to watch video on their computers. No one. You're out of your mind. And they were like thinking I was insane to do a series for the internet. And yet here we are. And now,
it's the way to go now.
That's the way to go. It's the way, a lot of people are it's being delivered. That's the way a lot of media. So now, to me, the next frontier is this format to do like a series on Netflix or HBO that takes you through a saga of the characters, and Jackie Kong style. I mean, my characters are really out there. So we'll see. That's what I'm working on. But that excites me, and I only can work on things that excite me. And
so, in relation to what you said about the Blood Diner screenings, just one thing that I noticed is that, which also I guess ties in with the very first question, that you like to, shock people. I think that audience involvement is something that is very important in your films. I notice also when I watch Night Patrol that you have this segment where you actually invite people to yell at the screen, where you're saying, well, if you know the answer, say it out loud. So is that something that you sort of think about a lot when you write something or when you shoot something, how it involves the audience?
Absolutely. I think that the audience, I try to make them an active participant, and I then try to manipulate the dialogue. So to give you an example, at the end I did that answer it if you think you know it, just to get them going, to get them involved. But earlier in the film, if you look at when I ran that film, it went out theatrically for New World, with it became the number one hit for them. Went out, was number one theatrically everywhere, even in New York. We started with 90 theaters in New York City, and the second week went up to 134 theaters, which is unheard of in films. Usually it drops 30%, even a studio movie. So this was a hit for them. They've never had anything like that, and so they were getting calls to book because the bookers watch these numbers. And in New York, get box office in New York, you can get it anywhere. That's the code. If you can make a hit in New York City, same thing with plays. You know that that's a hit anywhere. So we outgrossed Woody Allen's movie. We were number one everywhere, and full houses. So when you run it, we did the same in Chicago when I went into a Grindhouse, huge. It was downtown South Side. I went in to watch the film with a full audience. And the audience is also very vocal in these big houses anyway. So they're like, and they hated every joke. From the cockfight to the sperm bank scene to everything. And they're going, oh, boo. And they're making all this racket. Bad joke, right? So, if you watch, I have this thing that I do that I notice when you want to hook an audience. And I notice it when I watch a film. I watch a film and I'll say, at a particular moment, I'm hooked. Got me. I want to know what's going to happen next. So I'm very, very conscious of that when I make my films. And I know that with Night Patrol, we are doing joke. And I wanted to hook that audience. And comedy audiences and horror audiences, super jaded. They know everything. They've seen everything. If they can see your joke coming, they'll boo you. You'll lose them very fast. So I needed to hook that audience with Night Patrol. So at one point, I do all these jokes, and about 10 minutes into the film, he's talking to his psychiatrist, maybe 15 minutes in, and he's saying, he does another bad joke. Well, this played like crazy in the theater. So the audience yells, boo, and they're all booing the joke. I think you'll have your cake and Edith too. Okay. And so that actor, Jack Riley, turns to the camera, breaks that camera, and he says, yourself. At that moment, the entire audience goes crazy because I caught him. I got him. And then from that moment on, they love the film. And they never could predict another joke because they were afraid at that point then to be called. I broke the third wall and went right back to the audience and said, yourself. And they went crazy. The audiences loved it. That was always the pivotal point in every live screening of Night Patrol. Even if they did the movie, the first, beginning and could call every joke. But when that happened, I had them eating out of the palm of my hand as far as just flowing with the story and going with the jokes because I fell on the floor laughing on that.
Yeah, it's a great moment. It's a Groucho Marx moment. Basically, it's in one of the early Marx Brothers movies where Groucho turns to the camera and says, "Well, not every joke can be good. You got to expect that every once in a while."
Like a cigar, because he's a vaudevillian and he understood how to play that audience. And I think a lot of people are afraid to play the audience. They're afraid to talk to the audience. I think that they're just thinking that they're just running images. You know what I'm saying? Running beautiful images, the audience will just watch passively. I like to involve the audience, whether that's shocking them or talking directly off to them, but never always for a reason. That created a laugh, and it created an organic laugh that came from inside that I didn't manipulate. Do you see what I'm saying? I gotcha. Okay, like you said, the Groucho Marx with the cigar. Like I'm in on the joke too.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've never seen your films with an audience. I did watch Blood Diner with an audience, with a self-created audience, because I used to invite people to my house and show them Blood Diner, which was always fun.
Right, it gets a good reaction. You can only imagine in a theater full of people.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
It was so much fun going on tour. And that was fun. That was exciting to me. That was the only reason I did the Blu-ray commentary. It was to say, okay, let's take it on tour. And it was almost like a new way of showing a movie where you have a director that has a voice and a vision, a particular voice and vision, present the film delivers, and then the audience gets, it's like a rock thing, star tour, where they get to meet and talk to the director and find out, how did you even come up with that stuff? How did that happen? because they were truly affected by it. Because I find that most Q&As, the New Beverly was right. Most people just leave right after the movie. Especially even earlier. The movie's over, it didn't really move them. They really don't want to talk to the director if it didn't, so they just leave. And that's their experience. People don't stay. They told me at midnight for a Q&A. I said, they will. I just been on tour, nobody leaves. And it's not because I'm locking them in.
You see that at a lot of film festivals, that the director is there and he has a Q&A session, and a lot of people walk out after the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And you get the feeling that some of them just stay because they're being polite and not because, they are so interested. So, yeah.
Well, when you go into my Flickr, I put up the gallery of the tour recently while in the pandemic, just actually last week. Go into New Beverly Cinema and Seattle. You'll see the audience. This is after the film during the Q&A. No one leaves. No one. It's almost stunning to me. They invited me before the lockdown in February to speak at the Chapman University Film School, which is a big university here in Southern California. And it was the first ever horror film class. And they ran the film. And these are young 20-year-olds. And they were stunned by it. I mean, stunned, shocked. And loved it. And they said, he goes, well, you can leave or you can stay for the Q&A. The entire class, nobody left. Everyone had questions. How did you arrive at this film? Because clearly, as you know, as a filmmaker, the writing is so important and the vision is so important. And to come up with that is almost a kind of a magical thing. Most people can't find a good script, or they don't know how to identify one or write one or create, and then to take the next level as a vision, in a visual sense, and as an execution of the material. If you look at Blood Diner, the script, and you look at my execution, they have nothing to do with each other. Really. And I remember when we were filming it, even the one producer that helped rewrite the script, which was a complete knockoff of Blood Feast. It was like scene by scene, a total ripoff. I'd never seen Blood Feast, and I didn't want to see Blood Feast because I wanted to do my version. And when they saw what I was doing, when this one producer saw it, Maslin, he said, "You're ruining the movie. You're ruining it." He told me, if I would have shot it the way you wanted me to shoot it, I said, this movie would disappear into obscurity. For sure. I said, I'm doing my version of it. And he goes, well, you're making it funny. And I said, that's my version of it. So, but then now he's like trying to, claim that he knew it all the time. But I have to tell you, when I was making those films and I was in my 20s, I was very much alone in my process because everybody didn't get it, even a lot of people working on it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't get a lot of support, let's put it that way. With Night Patrol, same sort of thing happened. I pushed them to write the ending, and I said, I'm shooting the film in April. You've got till June to finish the ending, writing the ending, because we're shooting weekly film, and I need to get to the ending by June. So the Murray, the lead actor, has a nervous breakdown and runs off to Hawaii. The filming, and I won't go into the reasons why because they're very, it'd be very insulting and personal for him. But there was an issue that he had, and I said, I don't care what the issue is. We've got 2 more weeks of filming, and we haven't. You're supposed to write the ending. You haven't written the ending, and I had to fly to Hawaii. You got to remember, I'm only 26 years old. I got to go get this guy who's older than I am. He took off with a bunch of his friends. And I drag him back and I say, look, I've got all these people working on this film. You've got to finish the film. So I ended up writing the ending. That whole Good, the Bad, the Ugly ending was me because there was no ending. So I had to do a spoof on the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly to have that confrontation. And then, but I was alone because after I dragged him back to finish it, he was pissed off. He wasn't a happy camper. But me as the director, I said, I've got a whole crew that's working on this movie deferred and actors. And I said, we need to finish it. And so I was stuck alone editing that movie alone all summer long by myself with not a lot of allies, quite honestly. Because everybody at that point was like, Hollywood's a weird place. At that point, everyone was like distancing themselves in case it was a bomb. It was like, okay, well, because I was so young and I pulled together a crew, but I didn't look like what you would imagine a director would look like to deliver this film. You have to imagine when I went to sell it to New World, I was in the waiting room alone. Mostly everyone had their entourage or their lawyers or they came out and they looked at me and they said, "Where's the rest of your group?" Directed this movie. She can't be the one that we're talking to. Do you see what I'm saying? So it was a kind of a weird visual disconnect. It was like when I went to Italy, Night Patrol was a huge hit in Italy for the distributor, and I met the guys that I went to Italy to the distributor's office to meet the guys that were running the distribution office, and they were stunned. They thought they visually couldn't imagine, where's Jackie? I said, I'm Jack. And the same thing happened at New World. It was like, and then I realized now, many years later, because I was so fearless in directing this and just getting it done, not believing anyone telling me that I couldn't do it. Do you see what I'm saying? Even though I had to fight for everything, I just believed that I could do it. I knew I could do it. But I realize now, many years later, when I did the show, and you'll see me talk about it on the Cult Show a little bit, I realized that there was a visual disconnect. When for example, when they dubbed it in Italian, I put the outtakes of Night Patrol there, and they dubbed me with a male voice. So it's "Basta ragazzi." They all thought I was a guy, a man, and apparently a big guy. Because I have a really deep voice. "Basta ragazzi," ancora. I'm going, oh my God. So when I went to meet them, it was a visual disconnect. They couldn't imagine that they'd already dubbed me as a man, and then I'm a petite female, young at the time. And I said, it doesn't matter how young or old you are. They still can't imagine. It just doesn't fit almost like saying a color that you've never seen before. This is fuchsia, but you've never seen fuchsia before. So I was telling the guys over at Cult Show, that really I felt, now I understand, now it's like me walking in with my dog and saying, the dog directed the movie. It's because they couldn't fathom, that a woman could direct such a ballsy, shocking film. And so, but I didn't realize that at the time. What was wrong with everybody? They would just rather dub me as a guy, but it's such a subconscious thing that one has to overcome in this world, And so, but I realized that was. You can imagine if you walked in and said that's really how out of the ordinary, out of the usual, I was. And still remain being, because wait till you read my new one. I already know from my past that people are going to be shocked and they're not going to know what to make of it, because there's never, literally my assistant just, one of the producers just wrote in saying there's nothing else like it, nothing. Yet you can't put it down and you want to know what's going to happen next. To me, this was the ultimate compliment.